you're going to go out together, kind of.
We're 7 billion
Wednesday, Thursday,
people in the
announcement,
world
and then
today,
go up.
and
Are
1
you
in
gonna
8
use
of
click a
us
thing?
will go to
No,
bed
I only
hungry
got one
tonight.
slide.
That means approximately 870 million people are malnourished. Now, in the World Food Program, we have about 5,000 trucks every day, 40 ships, 60 airplanes delivering food aid in the countries that we work in. But food assistance is not only about delivering food aid. And if we want to be able to intervene properly in a crisis situation, we need reliable data, we need accurate data. And when a crisis unfolds, that's not the right time and place to try and acquire that data. We need to acquire the data before the crisis starts. And today, I'll take you on a tour to see how we in the World Food Program, we map and track hunger and food insecurity. We're present in over 80 countries, and we have a global network of food security analysts who are on the ground working with the vulnerable populations to understand where food insecurity happens. Basically, their work is to organize surveys, to collect data, and analyze that data and ensure that WFP programs and operations use that data for their programming. This is a group of surveyors that collected data and analyzed it just before the war in Mali. We partner with governments and local NGOs and universities and other UN agencies, of course, to deploy teams of enumerators, these surveyors, who go out on the ground and collect information about food security. The kind of information they collect will be about health, nutrition, poverty, access to food, livelihoods, agriculture, and so on. Now, who are the vulnerable populations? Children are the most vulnerable, and children and women are amongst the most of our beneficiaries in WFP. And it is important to understand that in the first 1,000 days of a child's life, nutrition is essential for their cognitive development. Undernourishment could mean that their growth will have irreversible damages. What we measure mainly is height, weight, and the circumference of the middle upper arm to monitor growth in children. And we also monitor growth in women of childbearing age, because those 1,000 days start during pregnancy until the child is about 2 years of age. Methodology and standardization is very important. We ensure that the enumerators are trained to be able to measure these indicators in a very standardized manner. This ensures that the population that we assess is statistically representative of the country. How do we assess food security from that? Well, the enumerator teams visit households on the ground and interview the head of the family, the head of the household, and ask them questions. We program all the questionnaires into mobile devices, and the data is entered on the spot. This is a home of a family in southern Congo in DRC, and there are about 1,000 to 2,000 fields of data that are being entered into the mobile device and transmitted from remote locations like this. So you can imagine that the information management infrastructure required to get that data from all these points, have it validated, transmitted to the country office for analysis, and then having uploaded to a repository and published to the web. It requires, there are certain challenges involved. We are now piloting other techniques like interviewing over text messaging, interviewing over phone calls, using voice recognition technologies to reach the most inaccessible areas like this one. We're also piloting key informers. So we would give a mobile phone programmed to a key informer in a village. It could be a doctor or a teacher, and train them to measure these indicators in a standardized manner so that they can transmit the data regularly. So when the household is being interviewed, they're asked a lot of questions, as I mentioned. Some of these questions are, what have you eaten over the past 7 days? This is called the 7-day diet recall. And from this information, we can calculate the calorific intake of the family during the week. And on the basis of the calories, we can understand if their nutritional requirements have been met or if there has been a gap. All these interviews are GPS tagged, so it's easy to map them. And we know in a detailed manner what food types are eaten, how frequently during the week. But actually, data is a lot more detailed than that. We can map it in using many different geographic parameters. So for example, if there's a climate shock, we can map it by agroclimatic zone and therefore understand how the food security is changed by that climate shock. We also ask the family what crops have they planted and how much. And that means that we can understand how crops are related to their food security. We also ask them what their income sources are. They have a variety of income sources, so we want to know what activities are linked to their food insecurity. We ask them what their coping strategies are. What happens if there's a shock? Do you sell your assets, your household, your productive assets? Do you eat the seeds that you had put away for planting for the next year? Or do you send your children to work instead of sending them to school? These are coping strategies, and they're a function of the vulnerability that we assess. And we analyze these by food security groups, or food consumption groups. Apart from household interviews, we also monitor markets and food prices and fuel prices. In 60 countries, we monitor more than 1,000 market locations on a monthly basis, and they're all georeferenced, they're all GPS tagged. And here we're setting up a system with the government of Senegal to transmit market price data by mobile phone. Now, analysis of markets leads to better programming. You all know there's a humanitarian crisis unfolding in Syria. Millions of people are displaced. And due to our data analysis and our knowledge of markets, we have deployed a cash and voucher system, starting on paper, but quickly moving to smart cards and text messaging, where the beneficiary receives a PIN on their mobile phone for single use that they can take to the shop and buy food that is more nutritious. And the system monitors their calorific intake while this is happening. I want to speak about modeling that we do with our data. I spoke about the markets. Well, these are 11 market locations that we monitor monthly in South Sudan. We know the prices of commodities in this market, but who are the people that use these markets? Who is paying that price? So we took road maps, we took terrain maps, slope maps, and we did an accessibility study. And we're doing this for all the countries to work out market catchment areas. So for each market, we would like to know what portion of the population is being served by that market. Another example of modeling, this is a simulation system, a shock impact simulation system. We know for each country what are the typical shocks that take place. We know what impact these shocks would have on the household and on their food expenditure. And so we can model the impact of the shock in terms of malnutrition to calculate the food gap and understand what people, who and how many will be affected if that shock were to happen. And another example of modeling using real data is the Africa Risk View application. We are downloading remote sensing imagery of rainfall estimates every 15 days. We know what crops are growing under that rainfall. We know what season it is. We know how long how much water these crops need, and so we can calculate the water requirement satisfaction index to understand what is what will be the yield, the agricultural yield that is lost due to drought or lack of flood, and therefore the impact on the population. Lastly, we're doing a Twitter analysis in Indonesia. Indonesians are very active. They tweet about what they eat, what they don't eat, their food security situation, and we found that it correlates very strongly with market price increase and spikes of insecurity. And so this sentiment analysis on Twitter can give us an early warning of what the market, what problems the market can have. Thank you.